Hello, hello. This is Dr. Alex Daves, and this is the final uh, installment of our Introduction to Ultrasound lecture series, Basics of Ultrasound at Mountain View. This is on our ultrasound workflow. So if you watched the other two videos, you'll have a good basic knowledge base on where to start with the machine, how it works, kind of things you might run into. If you are someone who's joining us that does not work at Mountain View, you're certainly welcome to watch this lecture as well. But this is our particular implementation, so this may not be as relevant to you. So if you're from outside of our system, well, again, welcome. I'm happy to share the information that we have, but this is our workflow in terms of what we do for logging studies and that sort of thing, and it may not be as relevant as the other lectures might have been. So disclosures, obviously none. So what are our objections? We're going to talk very briefly about what exams ACEPS considers core to emergency medicine. We're going to discuss how to use the ultrasound machines at our hospitals, and we're going to discuss using QPath to submit interpretations and review feedback on your exams. So in terms of what exams ACEP considers core, you first of all be aware that you need 150 exams of any type to graduate, and then you need 25 exams in each field that you want to be credentialed in as an attending. So what exam types are there? So here's a brief list from ACEP, but I've kind of marked it a little bit clearer, I think. So you have FAST, EFAST, procedural guidance, which is sort of everything procedure based, aorta, biliary, bowel, cardiac, DVT, OB, ocular, renal GU, soft tissue MSK, thoracic, and others. Others might include scrotum, appendix, transcranial Doppler, peritonsillar abscess, esophageal, or contrast enhanced studies, just things that, aren't considered core to emergency medicine now, but maybe they will in the future. And there's a couple of particular ones I want to highlight here, both the cardiac and the OB. There are invasive and non-invasive versions of those exams, right? So for cardiac, you have transthoracic echo, and you also have transesophageal echo. And then for OB, you have transabdominal OB exams and you have transvaginal OB exams, and ACEP differentiates those out as well. So in addition to the 25 cardiac studies, this would be like TTE that you would need to be credentialed as an attending. You would need 10 TEEs to be credentialed in TE as an attending, per ACEP's guidelines. And then OB is the same kind of thing. So 25 transabdominal first trimester OB scans, and then 10 transvaginal first trimester OB scans to be credentialed as an attending. So this is sort of our patient screen when we are about to go scan a patient, right? So the key things to know here are you have your patient ID field here, and we use barcode scanners with an encounter-based workflow. So you scan the patient's ID on the screen, it'll automatically input into that field no matter what field you have selected, which is kind of nice. And then after that, you can actually go ahead and put your 3-4, your HCA ID, into this resident field here. Now, if you are on an ultrasound shift or rotation, you should put your 3-4 in and then do the interpretation. But if you're working with someone who's, if you're scanning with someone who's working clinically, you should go ahead and add them to the study after the fact, which we'll talk about how to do that in just a minute here. Now, you can either scan first or you can enter this information first. So like in a John Doe or code situation, you can just scan and then enter the information after the fact. But once you hit end exam right here, it actually won't let you end the exam without entering some kind of ID, or it'll say, do you just want to delete the exam altogether? So thankfully, GE has made it a little bit foolproof, so you can be like, oh, I need to make sure I put this patient's ID in. Sometimes you might have stepped out of the room at that point in time. You have to go back and find their stickers or that sort of thing. But just make sure that you follow that workflow appropriately. So there's a couple of things that I really want to call particular attention to in terms of when you're using the machine. So obviously you have your patient selection here, right? So that's the screen we just came off of. This is your scan screen where you're doing your actual scanning. Here's your review button. What that does is that pulls up all of the images that you've gotten so far, and that also allows you to manipulate them. So for example, if you got a clip and you want to get a still off of it, you can pull the clip back up and take a still off it, or you've got to label it, you can add the label and resave the image. All sorts of stuff, as well as some other functionality I'll talk about here shortly. Date and time, nothing interesting there. Patient information, this is your safety information, your MI and TI that we've talked about. Probe selection, and obviously you would press it to get your preset selection. This stuff usually you don't have to deal with, but if you hit settings, you can hit clean, and then you can actually clean the screen. It won't go berserk. Down here we have your slider, so this lets you move backwards and forwards on the timeline. So the machine will actually tell you how long it will save. Right down here, it'll tell you how many seconds of of active scanning that it will have saved. So when you hit this freeze button, you can actually move along that whole timeline and just get whatever still that you want. And I would strongly recommend, whether you're getting stills or clips, always use this freeze button. It's going to make life easier for a few different reasons. One of which is that when you unfreeze, it'll erase whatever labels you have on it, so then it's ready for you to add a label for your next image. Whereas if you just hit store and go into clip review mode, it doesn't erase the label automatically, so you have to manually erase the label. It just adds one more step for you. So I just recommend, whether you're saving stills or clips, just get in the habit of hitting freeze first every time. And then once you hit freeze, you're going to hit this comments button here, and you're going to put the label on. Now, I've set all the labels up for pretty much all the indications, so there really shouldn't be anything that you have to do anything with. Occasionally you might have to free text something, but if you find that you're free texting a particular thing, the same thing multiple times, just all the time, let me know, and we'll look at whether or not we should actually add that. Any measurements are going to be under here. This is going to store either the still or the clip, whatever you're on. We're on B mode here, so it shows you what mode you're in, but a lot of times there's also another button here that says AMM, the anatomic end mode, and what that does is that lets you retrospectively add end mode to your picture. So say, for example, you've got a clip of a parasternal long axis of the heart and you're trying to do an EPSS, well, you can click this anatomic end mode, you can actually do it, and it actually allows you, so say, for example, you have, and then I apologize, I'm not an artist, you have your phased array screen here, right? And let's say your septum is not quite perpendicular, right? Oops, you didn't quite do it right. So, in traditional end mode, you can only come from the center of the screen to get your end mode. So, you can come out here, but you can see that distance is going to be, artificially increased because of your angle here, right? But what anatomic end mode lets you do is it lets you go, okay, I want to get the end mode image at this location, but from this angle. So you can actually get, essentially have a flat septum, even though on the actual screen it wasn't. So it's really super cool, and I love, the way that GE has this set up to do this retrospectively, and it seems to work really well. And I'm a big proponent of it. So if you ever need an end mode image, you can do it prospectively with regular end mode, or you can do it retrospectively with the anatomic end mode. The next thing to look at would be this button right here. So this actually switches you between clips and stills. So if you hit freeze first, you can actually hit this play button and switch into clip mode. When you're in clip mode, that's where these come into play. So then you have your little brackets that show you, how long your clip is. By the default length is 4 seconds, but you can actually make this wider or narrower, as you see fit. So if you're like, oh, you know what, I really wanted a much longer clip, because I think there's a lot of good information here, you can lengthen that out to, pretty much the entire length of this timeline, the maximum length that it'll save. In fact, I have a few really good, like 30-second clips of doing like a fascia iliaca block and things like that, because GE lets you do this, which I think is super cool. Whereas, in the past with some other machines I've used, you just have to have someone sitting there and hitting store, saving a clip every single time the last clip expires, so you get everything. So I think it's really cool that they let you do that. And then, or, maybe you were changing your settings, or you moved the probe, at the beginning of the clip, and you're like, oh, well, this is like kind of seizure inducing, right? Or this is like a, this is going to look like an oopsie clip because half of it's worthless. I have about half a second of whatever I'm trying to image, and then 3.5 seconds of essentially garbage, right? So this way you can actually cut it down to just have what you want, which really improves the quality of your image when you don't have a bunch of time of you just like searching for trying to find the structure, that I'm looking and going, afterwards going, what are they trying to show me here? So it makes it a lot easier to send much nicer pictures across. This full screen button really doesn't do anything useful, just don't hit it. And then when you're done, you would hit end exam here, and that actually, that button also exports the images up to QPath. So a couple things that I want you guys to be aware of when you're scanning. Make sure that you label absolutely everything. You need to be really patient and methodical when you're scanning independently. Take your time. Big pointer right here. Right? It's like, especially if you don't have, me or one of the other ultrasound faculty helping you out, you really want to take your time when you're doing your scans, and make sure that you use whatever references you need to. We've got tip sheets that are attached to some of the ultrasound machines that you can use that'll tell you, how to do what you need to do and how to improve your imaging. So reference all of that stuff. Use, you've got like 5-minute sono videos that you can reference to have a quick guide to make sure you're doing things correctly. So just really take your time, and do it right. The speed comes with proficiency. Proficiency comes with practice. And there's no substitute for practice. So make sure that you take your time and practice doing it right, and then you'll become fast after you're good at doing it right. My focus generally tends to be on high quality stills for pretty much anything that isn't a cardiac ultrasound. For the most part, unless you're trying to show motion, you don't really need a clip. Everyone's got a little bit of a different mindset on that, but one of the biggest things to be aware of is that not everywhere that you go uploads clips. So where I trained as a fellow, they only uploaded stills. So because of that, if you saved all these clips, you wouldn't get anything across the PACS just because it wasn't configured that way. Now we are configured to send stills and clips, but because I want you guys to be able to go anywhere and do this, I want you to have practice in doing stills. So generally speaking, unless we're imaging a moving structure, we're probably mostly doing stills if you're scanning with me, and that's what I'm trying to instill in you guys to get into the habit of doing. And honestly, that way it makes you sort of commit, right? Like, this is the image that I think is the best that shows what I'm trying to show. Whereas with the clip, you can be like, I think I got it there. So there's a lot of laziness sometimes that happens with clips. Then, with stills, you really have to show, this is what I think is going on. And again, it comes back to taking your time. You kind of sort through the timeline, go, this is the best one. Label it if you feel like it helps. Labels really do help. If something is a little bit ambivalent when we're looking at it, a little bit better because you were there scanning the patient. So add labels. Get clips when they're appropriate though, right? So as I discussed previously, the clip review allows labels and changes to the clips. So you just want to make sure that you get a really good clip, right? So not like moving the probe around, not changing the depth in the middle of it. You want to make sure that it tells the story that you want it to tell. And like I said before, you can change the start and stop position of the clip, to make it longer or shorter. So really, you can get exactly the story out of the clip that you want to get every single time. And then if you see pathology, take lots and lots of pics and clips. So this is something I say all the time, right? Like if you think someone's got a DVT and you just do your standard, 5 images, that's really not enough, right? Do some orthogonal images, put some color on there, show a filling defect, maybe do some augmentation, that sort of thing. The exception to this would be, if there's an unstable patient, you get what you can, right? But if the patient's not stable, you want to take as much time as you can to really show that pathology, because these are good studies for you guys to have as well, and to see and to be proficient with. You would not believe how often this comes up. If you don't actually end the exam, the images aren't going to show up on QPath. So please make sure if you can't find the images that you actually ended the exam. So, what is QPath, right? So QPath is our middleware. So that is the interface between the ultrasound machine, the PACS system, and the EMR. In our current implementation, we only use it for storing and performing quality assurance on images for residents. In the future, we may use it for billing purposes and that sort of thing, but this is what we use it for. So how to get to QPath, you guys should all know how. You can use the link on the hospital intranet, memorize the URL, or make an M-modal shortcut. Most of you guys I've set up with an M-modal shortcut. I'm obviously not going to put the URL on a publicly accessible video that's going out to the on the internet. But if you guys need it, reach out to me and I can help you make that happen. So when you open up QPath, it should look like this. If it doesn't, or if it immediately launches into the all exam screen, then what you need to do is you need to hit your name that's going to be right here, and then you hit restore defaults, and it'll relaunch QPath, and it will show up like this from now on. And the way this works is, so this is all exams, including anything that's claimed or unclaimed or anything. These are exams that you have claimed by either putting your 3-4 on the scan or by doing QView and claiming it. These are the exams that you have, so then it gets subdivided further, I should say. So these are the exams that you've claimed that you had not submitted for QA. And that's important because when you submit for QA, that's when you're saying, this is complete, it's ready for you to take a look at Dr. Dave's and to say whether or not it's adequate, right? If you don't submit it, I don't know that it's complete, and I don't look to give you guys credit for ones that aren't submitted. So if you want credit for graduation, which you definitely want credit for graduation, you want to make sure that you submit it. And then once I've seen and given feedback on a study, it's going to end up in this folder here, your Q8 exams. And then this last one, this actually shows you a graphical representation of how many exams that you've gotten credit for, during your residency. So this is really a newer thing that you guys are able to track this yourselves, and I think it's super cool that you're able to keep a lot easier track of how many of each one that you have. Yeah, so that's your STARTBOARD. So a couple of things we need to talk about. First one is the Edit tab. So this is used for assigning exam types, operators, and in the future attendings. Getting into the Edit tab, you can select the exam from the exam blade or open it and then click this Edit button here. Occasionally QPath doesn't automatically assign the exam type, or you may have chosen an incorrect preset, so you can actually use that to change it. Here's your exam preset here, and then additionally, maybe you didn't claim the study on the machine, you need to claim it now, or you are scanning with someone else and you need to add them. So you can do that. Here's that operator field right here, and you can add other residents. You just click that green arrow right there. And the last thing is just make sure you click the save button when you're done, because if you don't, it'll discard the changes. Okay, so occasionally you're going to need to manually split up an exam. And the reason I say manually is that this is usually done automatically by QPath as long as you change the preset on the machine whenever you're doing a new exam. So like if you're doing the aorta and you're on aorta, it's going to recognize that and call it aorta. And if you decide you want to do the kidneys, as long as you change the preset to kidneys, QPath will recognize, oh, this is kidneys now, and will create a new exam. If on the other hand you either forgot to do that, or you did a fast, you're like, you know what, I got some really good pictures of the kidneys there, and I want to split off a kidney there too. That way I get credit for that too. That's totally fine. The correct presets give better imaging, but as long as the images are adequate, you'll still get credit for it. I think that's totally reasonable. So this is the process of how you would do that. So you would go into your study that you want to change. You would click this image operations button, and you're going to see this. A lot of times this comes up just like on the side, and you have to hit the maximize button. So make sure you do that so they actually have the full view like this, so you can see everything. Next, you want to pick the images that you want to move, and you don't just click each one. That would be too easy. So you have to hold control if you're clicking multiple images, or you can hold shift. So if you want to pick these 4, right, you can either click this one and then hold control and click the next 3, or you can click this one, hold shift, and click this one. It's just like selecting files on Windows or highlighting text or that sort of thing. And once you've got everything selected, you're going to hit this split button here. And you're going to see this next. And again, this one comes up, not minimized. You're going to hit the maximize button. This is maximized now, but just so that way you get it to look like this. It's a lot easier. And you're going to see a few different things. So over here, this is the exam type. So this is, I want this new study that I'm going to make to be this exam type, right? So if you got a fast and you're splitting off the kidney views, you would scroll down to renal and you would click that. And the next thing is this move or copy here. And this is important because you can do this this is for all of the images, but you can also do it on a per image basis. So for example, let's say you did a fast exam, it also did a cardiac at the same time, but now you have the subxiphoid that you kind of want to keep in both, right? So you got your fast exam, it's set up as fast, but you got your cardiac views too. You would pick all the cardiac images, and then you would click cardiac, and you would click move, and then your subxiphoid one, you would change it to copy. That way the subxiphoid stays in both exams. So that's how you would do how you do that in that case. Occasionally, either you or QPath will mess up and the exam will be split incorrectly. Sometimes what I've seen happen is it'll split an exam off twice. So like you started in cardiac, you did something else, you came back to cardiac, and now you got 2 cardiac exams listed on them. Unfortunately, the only way to fix this is to collapse the entire thing back down, and that's by using this unsplit button, and you have to manually split them back out. It's somewhat obnoxious, but that's how you have to do it. So when you're filling out a worksheet, this is in general what it's going to look like. So there's a few different things to notice. This doesn't show it, but for us, all of our interpretations are right on the top. The most important part comes first. And then you have your indications, you have views, you have all kinds of things, and this varies from exam to exam. But what doesn't vary is these little red asterisks here. So these are required fields. So basically, you need to fill everything that has an asterisk. You need to put something there. And then once you have something in all of them, there'll be green check marks, and then at the top of the worksheet there'll also be a green check mark that shows up at the very top. I wish it was a red X before it was ready, but it's not, but that's okay. So this is how you know that your worksheet is complete and ready to be submitted. Now, most of any given exam worksheet is actually hidden by default and is revealed as you click through the parts that you see. So this is like a smart program type of thing. So for example, saying, oh, this is a normal gallbladder, right? If you click this, well, all these abnormal findings, you don't need to see them anymore, right? So they actually disappear as soon as you click normal gallbladder. And then you can say, oh, hey, I actually saw the CBD here. So you click that you saw the CBD, and now your CBD findings pop up as well. So, we did this sort of to make it so that only relevant parts of the worksheets are going to be displayed at any given time, so that way you're not sort of overwhelmed with this 3-page long document that you only need to click 6 boxes on. And we felt that really helped you, help the residents to understand how to get through the worksheet a little bit easier. If you want, you can also document this in Meditech there's a padlock button all the way at the top. You can click the padlock, and then it'll convert it to a text block, and you can just copy and paste that directly into Meditech to have your full interpretation in there. Okay, so the next thing is, submitting your exams for QA. So there should be this button visible when you're in QPath called Submit for QA. So what this does, this tells us that you consider both the exam and your interpretation to be complete, and you want credit for the study. So this is all of those things, right? So it's really important that you have it done before you do this. And then you're going to click that Submit for QA button. It's going to pop up like this. You're going to click the Select Reviewer button. It's going to pop up like this. Click by name. Click Select. And it's going to look like this. Thankfully this has changed so that by default this is unchecked, but previously this was checked and we didn't have email working, so it was breaking things. Just make sure that these boxes are unchecked before you click OK. And then the last thing is you're going to go ahead and click OK. You will get an error. There'll be an error and it won't submit properly if you have this checked. Now, I'm, in the future, when the email is set up, you'll actually get an email and an anonymized PDF of your feedback. But in the meantime, if you have specific questions that you don't feel like were answered in my, my narrative free text feedback that you'll see how that works momentarily, you can always let me know, and I'm happy to go over the QA of your studies if you have specific questions. And then again, once you're on second, when you're in your second year rotation, the first thing you do at the beginning of the day when you have a scan day is you check QA on your studies from the previous day. So when I know someone's on the ultrasound rotation, I'm actually checking scans and QAing them every single day, so you get really timely feedback, and just make sure that whatever feedback I gave you, that you're incorporating that into your scans, so I'm not giving you the same feedback every single day. So this is going to be just a short video that shows how interpretations can be done directly on the machine as well as submitting for QA. You shouldn't do this if you're on a scan shift or there's another resident scanning, because you can't add them from here, but you want to use full QPath. You can add them so you get credit. So here we go. So scanning, you get all your pictures, right? And then you click this End Exam button. Yes. And it's going to kick you back out to this screen, right? So the next thing is you're going to go into the local archive. Your exam should be the very first one because it's done by chronological order. Sometimes you might have to hit like clear search or hit today's exams, but you would hit this, and then you would come down here and you hit this QView button down here. Now what's going to happen is it's going to launch the QView application, and it's going to immediately refresh. So you always want to wait for it to refresh. So we just did the refresh, and now, so this is what you have available to you. So this actually shows, we did multiple exams, so it has select split exam, and you can actually switch between the worksheets for each exam. And it'll change the entire worksheet. And then you also, if you forgot to assign yourself, here's operator right here, so you can actually pick your name from the drop-down. In this case, I'm going to pick myself. In the future, when we're billing, you'll need to list an attending as well, but for right now, you don't need to. The only other downside, though, is that if you didn't put your 3-4 in, you're gonna have to go to each exam and put yourself back on. It doesn't automatically permeate through all the exams. The one nice thing, though, is you can see it auto saves after you do it, so you don't have to think, oh crap, did I save it after I picked myself? And then otherwise, after that, you just go through, you do the exam like normal. You're tapping on this. If you want to free text something, you hit this keyboard button and then you tap the field. But otherwise, you just go through the worksheet like normal. And then there's a save button. There's a save at the top and there's a save at the bottom. Either one works. And then you're going to hit this Submit for QA button, and then it's going to disappear, and that's submitted for QA. And then you just hit that Close QV button at the top, and it brings you back to this. And then just really briefly, I wanted to talk about changing worksheets on this. So keep in mind that most exams only have one worksheet. but the one that really has multiple is usually the cardiac arrests, right? So you have regular cardiac echoes and you have your cardiac arrest echoes. So this just shows you how to go between the two. So in this case, there's no split exam. It just has a worksheet. So it has cardiac and it has the cardiac arrest. You want to pick whichever one is appropriate. So if you're doing it for an arrest, you want to pick the cardiac arrest worksheet. If you're doing it for not an arrest, you want to do the not arrest worksheet. It's pretty straightforward. Everything else is the same. You go through and fill everything out. Make sure you select yourself as an operator if you didn't put your 3-4 in, and then save and submit for QA, and that's it. So the next thing is actually viewing your QA. This should be visible by default whenever you open it up. If not, let me know and we'll make sure that you get set up properly. And it should look like this. So you have your interpretation on the left, and you have my feedback on the right. So image quality is ranked from 1 to 5. 1 is nothing recognizable. 2 is I can see something but not enough for diagnosis. 3 is there's some flaws, but I feel reasonably comfortable making the diagnosis. 4 is good pictures, diagnosis is clearly well supported, and only very minor technical issues. And then 5 is like, wow, these are great images that you should be super proud of. So as you guys start out, you're going to be mostly getting 3s, occasional 4s, and as you progress, you should get more 4s and 5s. As you progress, I also do expect more from you as well. But again, the more ultrasounds you do, the better you get at it. The better quality images you're going to get. Accuracy. This technically has 2 parts, but only one of them is visible here. There is accuracy. There's basically, do I agree with your interpretation based on your images, which is this one, accuracy of images as presented, and then there is accuracy compared to definitive imaging. So in other words, if there's like a X-ray or CAT scan or ultrasound or whatever that I looked at and compared your images to theirs and your interpretation to theirs, that'll be there as well. And they'll either be marked as true positive, true negative, false positive, false negative, or technically limited study. Comment is where I leave free text personalized feedback if it's a bit applicable. I try to leave some kind of free text feedback on most of your exams unless I was scanning with you in person, in which case you got the feedback in person, so it's fine. And then this is the most important field right here. So this is what actually gives you credit. So it shows up on your progress report and counts towards both graduation and for credentialing as an attending. So you really want there to be a yes here. And the biggest things that I use to determine whether or not to give someone credit is, are the images at least a 3? And then did you get at least 50% of your interpretation correct? If there is like some glaring error, I might have to say no. So like if there's a massive pericardial effusion, you say no effusion, then I'm probably going to have to say, well, no, you don't get credit for that because you missed this giant effusion, right? On the other hand, if there's if there's a teeny tiny little effusion and you say no effusion, but the rest of your interpretation is pretty good, I'm probably going to give you credit for it. There's no like hard and fast rule. That's just a general guideline. But also, I will give you guys lots of feedback, especially I make it a point that if I'm not giving you credit, I give you much more feedback of this is why you didn't get credit. This is what you need to do next time to get credit for it. So you're going to know if you don't get credit, you're going to know why and then what to do next time so you do. So it's never going to be like a mystery. A couple of last things, I send generally about weekly reminder emails about unsubmitted exams. There's no need to reply. You just go on to your unsubmitted exams tab and fill out the worksheet and submit it. We're going to be going through all of the ACEP approved or ACEP core exams throughout the year, so you get a lecture on each of the core modalities by the time the year is over. And then there's going to be at the end of the year there's going to be like a 10 to 15 minute presentations that everyone's going to give on an interesting case that you had or like a particular exam that interests you. I would recommend doing focusing more on like a case, because those are a little bit easier to do than the exams. They tend to be a little bit more time consuming if you want to cover them with any sort of detail at all. So aggregate summary, right? Ultrasound is turning sound into pictures. I want you guys to learn our core applications, try to be really good at them. We talked about the basics of ultrasound machine, using the ultrasound machine and knobology so you can get really good pictures. We talked about QPath, how to interface with it, filling out the worksheets, submitting and viewing your feedback. And I hope you guys are ready to scan.